So Maria, thank you for being with us.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah. How do you like Malta so far?
It's beautiful. It's a little different than I expected. Today, it's absolutely sunny and stunning outside, and I think we all noticed the water. I have to say it was a bit windy upon arrival. I think it was windy and raining earlier in the week. But it is stunning, and I can't wait to go see the history of Malta. I think I read somewhere that there were 11 different foreign rulers of Malta over the years, which explains why the plugs are UK, but the euros are the currency. So I'm excited to explore the history and learn more.
Yeah. I even realized the drive on the wrong side of the road.
Or the right side, or the left side. whichever way.
Well, your journey at ADP was impactful and inspiring, very inspiring for many of us. So you started from selling door to door. You led several business units in US. You led UK as a general manager, and now you're here as the 7th CEO of ADP.
Yes.
So how has your history with ADP influenced your vision about ADP future?
Yeah, fair enough. So just to expand a little bit on my background, so Virginia's right. I started with ADP 26 years ago. I started selling payroll door to door. I spent years in service and implementation. I spent some time as the general manager in the UK in our international business. I spent a bulk of time in our BPO offerings, our beyond payroll offerings, business process outsourcing. And I expand on this a bit more because it's really informative in terms of how I see the business, how I've grown up watching the transformation of payroll, watching the transformation of technology and how it impacts the business. But moreover, I think for me, it really comes back to all of you. It comes back to our clients. And so very early in my career, I had an opportunity to engage with our clients literally on the street as I was selling payroll door to door. And I learned about business. I learned about commerce. I learned about why companies such as our founder, Henry Taub, chose to become a business owner. I learned about their dreams, their purpose. And I really learned about meeting clients on their terms and where they engaged. And I think one of the things that it taught me was really the power of listening and the power of really understanding what it is that our clients do. I have to tell you, I wake up every day. I have a new role. Virginia's right. I now serve as the 7th CEO of this amazing organization. I wake up every day and I think about all of you. I think about your workers. I think about our million clients, our 40 million wage earners that rely on ADP. And I think about it because the role that we play in all of your lives and all of your workers' lives is a really meaningful one. You said it earlier, without payroll, nothing else really matters. Without payroll, the world doesn't turn. We learned that definitely throughout the pandemic. And so the trust that all of you give to ADP is really the trust of your greatest asset, which is your people. And so it's informed really everything that I stand for, everything that I'm about, and I think it has for ADP. And so when I think about the future, as we continue our journey of designing best-in-class products for all of you, it is really about design thinking. You mentioned it several times on stage. It's about solving real challenges that you have, challenges that you may not even realize that you have yet. And so as we invest, whether it's in our service offerings or it's in our products and technology, that is really the focus and the lens that I apply, which is ensuring that as we modernize, we are thinking about the changing world of work, and we are consistently using the client voice from all of you and your workers, and the way that our purpose and always designing for people and how we modernize. A big piece of that, I think you'll see the resounding theme. It's actually very interesting. You know, you go back to the history of automatic payrolls. You know, along the way, we became automatic data processing, and data is our middle name, and it serves really as the power of everything that we do. And it really is what I believe the number one reason, the power of what we have with the data and how we can serve that up is fundamental to ADP being the best partner for all of you on your journeys.
Right, so you mentioned data and you know the power of data.
Yes.
So could you expand a little bit on how you see the power of ADP data delivering value to our clients globally?
Absolutely. I think a lot about the comments you made some earlier. Neela made some earlier in terms of data and the requirement of data in the world today. Everybody wants data. They want real data. One of the most unique things about ADP is that our data is unique. It's across 40 million wage earners, 15 million outside of the US, 5 million represented in this room alone. That unique lens that we have is something that has been born over time. It also gives us a tremendous amount of trusted expertise. But it's bigger than that. It's really about what we have the privilege, quite candidly, to look at and to be able to study, and these insights that we have and enabling them inside of our products. So our goal is to continue, and we've, in my opinion, just started this journey, and I think Srini will speak a bit about it, but it's really about putting data at the center of everything that we do from a product set, whether we're serving up insights at the individual level, whether we're serving insights up at the practitioner level, or really at the company level, because everybody wants to know the magical thing, which is, what is that person doing? What's the company across the street doing? What are you doing? How are you providing for your employees on a global scale? How are you doing it on a local scale? And we have a huge ability to take our data and push it into our products to make meaningful and actionable data be delivered to all of you so that you can make better decisions across your global organizations and really in the wider context of the world. And never mind all the great work that we also have access to through what I believe is one of our most proud assets inside of ADP, which is the ADP Research Institute. So you heard Neela speak earlier. You'll hear Marcus speak in a little bit later. But the thing that stands out to me the most about the ADP RI, as I think about all the things that we publish and have been publishing, whether it's the National Employment Report or it's the studies we're doing now on the world of work, is that the data we have is unique, because we're the only ones who have accurate, real-time data across this workforce, this global workforce. But we also have an obligation. We have an obligation to take that data and give it to the world so that all of us can be better informed to move the world of work forward.
That's a great topic, and we spoke about it. I mentioned a couple of times the Client Advisory Board meeting we had yesterday, and we had a big conversation about data and how important it is for companies and for clients to understand, to have benchmarking data and understand how they are doing. We also mentioned the Nela speech, and which was very informative, and of course we heard about the economic conditions and the labor market trends and the talent dynamics that many companies are facing. So what do you think will have the biggest impact on the road ahead?
So I think we saw today from one of Neela's slides, and it's really interesting when you think about the timeline of work and the history of workers. I'm a little bit of a history buff, so I like to study these things. Throughout, whether it was the Industrial Revolution or the technological revolution, I think what we feel today, and we definitely have felt it over the last handful of years, is that business is continuing to move, it's shifting. I would say that global business is fluctuating. When I think about globalization, and I think about now what today is an environment where you need solutions for a global company, and you also need local expertise. And so when I think about the fluctuation, again, of business on a global scale, the key in my mind is to ensure that you're picking a partner, such as an ADP, that really has the ability to engage both ways, both at the global aggregate level, but also with that expertise across 142 countries. And I think that's a big piece of it. I think the other, and this is an obvious statement, is connectivity is changing. Human connection is changing. I think we swung all the way to the technological human connection. I think the pandemic definitely changed the course of time in terms of people wanting to feel connected, and that shift is not done as workers come back to the workplace. You saw this from Neela's slides. The priorities of what they choose, the careers that they're deciding on, are the reasons behind what's important to each worker is shifting. And I think that's shifting because connectivity is shifting. And as a result of that, worker expectations are continuing to evolve. You know, we talk a lot about pay transparency. We talk a lot about the road that we're all on to try to get to pay equity. And these are shifts in the worker environment, but they're also shifts in the worker expectation. And we, all of us as global companies, we have an obligation to help. And what I will say more than anything is that the employers that respond to these needs, the employers that engage to serve up to their workers, the simple asks that they're asking for, in this case being pay transparency and views on pay equity, those employers are better served than those that are not, because statistics would tell you that, again, those are the companies that today's worker wants to go work for and work with from a career perspective. So again, when I think about the strength of ADP and I think about who we are as a global outsourcing company to help all of you, I think together we can do incredible work.
That's amazing. I kind of got this started. I was listening. I forgot I had to ask the next question. Sorry. Okay. Well, in this room, we hear from transformation stories from our clients. And I mentioned, some of the important considerations to be done when you embark in this journey. So as you think about some of the leaders in this room that need to start a transformation journey, what would be the advice you give to them?
So first and foremost, to those clients that present at these events, my hugest amount of gratitude. It is actually one of my very, very favorite parts is meeting all of you. And it's also hearing these transformation stories, because I think sharing the journeys that we've all embarked on is very informative for our design thinking, but it couldn't be more important for all of you to share your stories. Certainly like all of you, ADP, we're undergoing our own transformations. We have a transformation office that we've had for several years. And so when I think about the big transformations that as a company we've embarked upon over my years, it is a lot. It's interesting, actually. Sebastian said it today, although in a very different way, across his 100 ideas. It's really about starting with the end in mind. It's really about putting the goal out there of what does it look like. Years ago, I had a great honor of going with a small group of executives to visit Amazon. And one of the tactics that Amazon, reminded me again of the 100 ideas and writing them down, one of the tactics that Amazon does in their innovations is they actually write an article, a press release, of what they want the vision to be. The one that was shared with us at the time of the visit was the idea for the Amazon Go stores, I believe they were called, which was really this ability to walk into a store and what felt like shoplifting, but walk out with merchandise and actually have trackers watch what is shopping. And what's interesting to me is putting that out there, the end in mind, is really about outcomes. So it's about writing the outcomes first, and I suppose if you at least write it down, you're 42% more successful, that it's going to come to fruition. But even better yet, once you communicate it, right? So I think his next task was for all of us to text our goals to each other or to somebody you cared about. And that's another big piece of this, the journey of putting the vision and the outcome out there, which is really about ensuring that it's written down as a vision. In the case of the Amazon Go stores, I believe that innovation was somewhere around 6 or 7 years. So you imagine writing something that seemed so futuristic at the time and working on it for so much time. But I do believe when we think about transformations, having clarity on the vision, having alignment on that clarity, communicating that vision, because transformations, we know this, we do them, all of you are doing them, they're hard. And as an organization goes through all of these various stages of a transformation, having a vision of the outcome and the end in mind, in my mind, is an imperative. I think the other is making sure that you're picking the right team. You talked a bit about this. This is about making sure you have the right team members, the right stakeholders, the right alignment, the right budgets. It's also about having the right partner, somebody that's with you for the long haul, somebody that's willing, with their expertise, to partner, to flex as you continue the journey of a transformation. So that's a big piece of it. I think the other, and again, back to the client stories of today, it is about leveraging each other. It's about leveraging others who have gone through transformations. You have a unique opportunity sitting here. We have 200 or so attendees across 130 different unique companies that all have the ability to share your stories and find new friends, whether that's using the app. I think I'm up to like 6 or 7 friends on the app. Not that I'm asking for more, but that would be nice. But leveraging the app, building a network, using the bridge that we offer to this Rethink community, because undoubtedly someone in this room has faced whatever obstacle is coming along in your transformation, or something similar that can help you get to the next phase so that you can ultimately realize the vision of the press release, if you will.
So in the introduction, Marcella spoke a bit about the evolution of global payroll, and she mentioned client centricity being a guiding principle. What does that mean for you?
So I spoke a little bit about this already, Virginia, when I gave my background, which is how I grew up, which is really about listening to our clients, listening to all of you, so that together we can continue to think about the world of work. But listening is really about curiosity. It's really about pausing to ask difficult questions. It's about ensuring that as you are curious and asking questions, you may stumble upon either a problem statement, an opportunity that perhaps you didn't know yet. And we all know it, right? But curiosity, it breeds innovation. And from asking the right questions and listening is really where innovation happens. And I think we looked at a slide earlier today that really showed, I think it was in Marcella's, how we co-design global payroll over the years with our clients, with all of you. Globalization, when I started here 26 years ago, it wasn't what it is today. The ask to have a global system wasn't even possible. The technology didn't exist. And so today, as we've all of us grown up together and really been solving for the world of work, we have co-designed this experience, but our work is not done, and we know this, and this is really why for us having client centricity, this active listening and curiosity inform our combined innovation is such an imperative. For me, it's such an imperative that, and you'll hear from, here in a few hours, you'll hear from Srini Kutam, who is our newly minted President of Global Product and Innovation. For me, the design thinking of customer centricity is such an imperative that I asked Srini, who has deep HR and HCM domain expertise, also has technical expertise. He has been an ADP client, both externally to ADP. Most recently, he served as our Chief Human Resources Officer for the last 4 or 5 years at ADP. He built all of our Customer Zero products. Many of those innovations we've taken into market. And as you know, Virginia, in a lot of my meetings over the years, leading various projects, transformations, I had this tool that I would use when we were really trying to leverage client centricity, which is that I used to leave an empty seat at the table, and I would sit with my leadership team, and I would turn to this empty seat, and I said, if the client was sitting here right now, or the worker, the associate of our client was sitting here, how would they think about this? And I believed in this so much that I asked Srini to actually step from his role as our Chief Human Resources Officer across to lead and design the future of our products in his new capacity, running global payroll and or global product and innovation. So very excited to have him sitting at the table as the ultimate representation of all of you.
And actually, Maria likes to create new words and acronyms, like GSD, get stuff done, or like, and the one that she used more is WWTC. And once I said, what does she mean? What would the client think? I said, okay, because that's the question she asked. When you present an initiative, the question is, what would the client think if we do this initiative? So she even created an acronym out of that because it's very important.
I'll work on it.
Another thing you're passionate about, and
Yes.
so am I, is inclusion and diversity. So could you share some thinking about that?
Absolutely. Very passionate about this topic. Again, when I think about innovation and the things that we all know, curiosity breeds innovation, diversity breeds innovation. When I think about DE&I as the 3 circles, if you will, that are all important, they're really a giant Venn diagram in my mind, and where they overlap, right? So if you know a Venn diagram, 3 circles that overlap, and where they overlap is where culture ultimately meets innovation. When I think about DE&I, it has to be intentional. It has to be at the very top of your organization. It has to be in the fabric of an organization. It has to be intentional, and it has to be, in my mind, consistent. It is about all the things that we know. It's about allowing the room for different voices. This comes back to space and listening and curiosity. It is also about allowing the room for different voices, but the empowerment of those voices to impact the outcomes. And I think that's a big piece. I think today's modern world, too, it's about tough conversations. That's definitely still topical for all of us. And those, again, are really grounded in allowing space and allowing curiosity. Listening leads to belonging. Listening to somebody's story leads to learning. It also leads to belonging and connectivity. And in my mind, as many things such as transformation and such as innovation, DE&I is work that's in progress. I think we've barely just begun, and there's certainly no finish line. As all of us as global leaders, we're continuously assessing. We're thinking about new actions. We're thinking about ways that we can lead this world to greater progress. So, I would say it's the same thing as innovation. It can't just sit in one group in an organization. It has to, DE&I can't just sit inside of human resources. It really has to be in the fabric of all of us as leaders, all of us in our companies, and really the entire world for us to make meaningful progress.
I couldn't agree more, and it is a journey, and we need to be intentional and set goals and measure progress on milestone to make a difference and to keep making a difference. So how we think about corporate social responsibility, we are leaders, all business leaders in this room, so how do you think global businesses can ensure they are honoring their commitment to be good global corporate citizens?
Great question. As you can imagine, I am 30 days in to my new role. I spent the last year as the president getting ready to step into this role, and I spent that time studying a lot of various things, one of which was this piece of the equation, which is really who is ADP in the world of work, who do we want to be in the global world, and as a company, as a corporation, what is the meaning of being a company? And I started, I think I mentioned a little bit of a history buff, and I'm certainly not an economist like Neela, but I started studying the purpose of a company. And I think many of us know this story, but in the 1970s, an economist named Milton Friedman really defined the purpose of a business. And it was back then and lived on for many, many years, from the 70s until 2019, but it was really about capitalism. It was about making money. It was about shareholder return. It was literally the purpose of a corporation was what it owed to its shareholders, the owners, and it was about making money. The world has changed tremendously since the 70s. I think the thing that really stood out to me, I now have the honor, I just assumed the seat at the Business Roundtable, which is an organization of many CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. In 2019, 181 of those CEOs actually got together and evolved the original thinking of what the purpose of a business was to what's known today as stakeholder capitalism, or really stakeholder management. And so ADP was one of those signatories. And what does that mean today, right? And what it means is a corporation, by the way, is still responsible to its shareholders, but it's also responsible to its clients. It's responsible to its associates. It's responsible to its suppliers and how they operate in the world. And it's also responsible to the communities and the environment, if you will. And so I think all of us now, today, as I think about stepping into this role and the role that I have as a leader of a Fortune 500 company, to make sure that we are, and I believe ADP, just like all of your companies, we're obligated to do more. We're obligated to lean in to make sure that the world continues to be a thriving place. When I think about ESG, as you can imagine, spending a lot of time now with investors, a lot of the questions we get, we did a road show back in November and met with a lot of our European investors. And I would tell you, if it wasn't the first question, it was the second question, which is, how does ADP think about ESG, and what does it mean to us, and how can we contribute? I think one of the biggest places that ADP can contribute as it relates to the ESG side of the world, and even the stakeholder capitalism, is the S, right? It's about the social. It's the place that all of us as HCM leaders together and combined can make meaningful impact. We can solve for the world of work. We can respond to the changing and evolving needs of workers. We can publish data that that yields information to make progress. And so I think the S for all of us as HCM leaders is a big piece. Not to say that in the environmental and the governance side is not equally as important. It is, but I think we have a huge opportunity. With the S, I think the other part to how I think about the obligation we all have as global citizens to make the world a better place is we have to have milestones, we have to have goals. We have them at the highest levels of ADP. We get held accountable to them by our board, we get held accountable to them by our investors. So just like anything in life, we should have measurements and we should have accountabilities, but we shouldn't do it just for that. We shouldn't do it so we can say we do it. We shouldn't do it so that we can, check the box and meet the goals. We all need to continue to think this way because it's the right thing to do.
We have to, definitely. So as we come to the end, I see the timer
Yes.
000 of our conversation. You're from Sweden. We couldn't get the ABBA on stage, of course, but we got an Italian vocalist, very famous, Andrea Bocelli, very proudly representing.
Exciting.
Yeah, and I know you're a big fan.
I am.
So what is the song you're more looking for?
Yes, big fan of Andrea Bocelli. And before I give the answer, I just want to take a minute just to say, because I would be remiss if I didn't, thank you all for being here, and thank you all for being our partners, our clients, and thank you for your business. I am very grateful, and with that, I will leave you with my favorite Andrea Bocelli song, which is, as we say in English, time to say goodbye, or partirà. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Partirà, so
So,
partirà.
time to say goodbye also
Time
to
say
Maria.
goodbye.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for being with us.
Thank you.